There's been fierce debate in Australia about how to ensure our energy is reliable and cheap. Pumped hydro has been touted as a possible solution, and while Snowy 2.0 has stolen the headlines, Tasmania also wants some of the action. Today, more details on the potential of pumped hydro in the Upper Isle were released, but it rides on whether Tasmania can be better connected to the mainland. Natalie Whiting reports.
93% of Tasmania's power is renewable. It's thanks in large part to hydro generation. Now the state is ready to start sharing more of its clean energy with the rest of Australia.
Our vision is for Tasmania to take its rightful place as the nation's renewable energy state, but also to be the nation's renewable energy battery.
Hydro Tasmania announced today it's identified 14 possible pumped hydro sites at 8 locations across the island.
Our energy system is in transition. We're seeing more and more intermittent sources of power come in, particularly wind and solar. And we need to balance out that volatility with reliable dispatchable power. And this is where pumped hydro can really make a difference.
Pumped hydro is a bit like creating a big battery. When there's less demand for power and prices are low, water is pumped uphill. Then, when there's more demand, the water is released. As it falls, it turns turbines, creating electricity.
It's much cheaper to build a pumped hydro. We already have hydro infrastructure and transmission infrastructure. We have high hills and steep banks and flat spots at the top of those hills where we can put the additional storages required for pumped hydro. This all adds up to Tasmania providing the most cost-effective pumped hydro solutions in Australia.
But there's one big hurdle in the plan: how to get the cheap, clean power to the mainland where there's most demand. Currently, there's only one cable across Bass Strait for electricity to travel through. It's called an interconnector. A second interconnector has long been touted, but would likely cost $1 billion, and there's no word yet on who would pay for it.
The feasibility study is important in developing the next stage of decisions on the interconnector.
Once the final pumped hydro sites are selected, developing them would likely cost between $2.6 and $3.75 billion.
We've been doing detailed modelling on the costs and prices that'll come out, and we'll be releasing that over the coming days.
Increasing wind power in the state is also part of the plan. It would feed the proposed pumped hydro and also help justify the calls for a second interconnector. But the Upper Isle isn't alone in eyeing off the country's energy future. Around 700 kilometres from Tasmania, another pumped hydro project is being discussed. I'm in the Kosciuszko National Park, and this dam is part of the famed Snowy Hydro scheme. It's also a key part of an ambitious pumped hydro plan called Snowy 2.0.
It's about 2,000 megawatts, which is a 50% increase in what we have capacity. Capacity is having energy in storage, ready to use when you most need it.
The plan involves connecting this water reservoir to another with an almost 30-kilometre underground tunnel. Despite the scale of construction required and the possible $4 billion price tag, the team at Snowy Hydro is confident.
This is an economic project. This project works. You know, some people say, oh, this is some sort of project that's going to be funded from the taxpayer. No, it's not. It's funded off our balance sheet. We're doing it because we believe it works.
But like Tasmania, Snowy 2.0 also requires more interconnection with the network.
The transmission networks are built around the thermal powers, and unfortunately where the renewables is being built is not where the thermals are.
The transmission upgrades would cost an additional $2 billion.
If I've got a business in Sydney and they're upgrading the highway between Sydney and Melbourne, I'm not paying for the highway. The people who are using the highway are the ones paying it.
The Snowy Hydro Board will make a final investment decision on the project at the end of the year. But in the nearby town of Cooma, the early confidence is infectious.
Everyone's just been overjoyed, basically. It can only be positive for the town, for the region, for everyone involved. People are discussing property prices going up and just the amount of flow and effect that it'll have on the town.
Snowy 2.0 has been seen as one of Malcolm Turnbull's pet projects. But the Energy Minister says the government isn't playing favourites.
Does the federal government have a preference between Snowy 2.0 and the Tasmanian hydro?
They're both important projects. And pumped hydro, whether it's Snowy or whether it's the projects here, they're not mutually exclusive, they're actually compatible with each other.
The two of those projects create a really interesting future option. It may very well be that over time we do need both.
But analysts still want more detail on both proposals.
As we get into the economic feasibility, so we get beyond the environmental impact and the technical side of things into the economic feasibility, that's when life will get interesting.
Despite the possible hurdles, the charge is on in Tasmania to become the battery of the nation.
Tasmania should be excited about all these projects. We're very excited about these opportunities, and we think Tasmania should be very proud of the opportunity that we have right now.
Natalie Whiting reporting.